Pesachim Daf Yud Zayin. Today's email comes from Yitzchak Cowler from Stamford Hill, London. He says, you mentioned that you can watch the shir on Torah Anytime, on All Daf, on the app. And I want to add that you can watch it on OU's website, where you can watch it together with the daf in front of me. I listen many times to your shir before I learn it in the evening with my chavrusa. The examples you give add a lot of spunk that all learners in my base medrash enjoy. Yitzchak Cowler, Stamford Hill, London. Thank you. Yossi ben Yoezer says a statement. He says there's no tumah when it comes to mashke, when it comes to liquid. And we have machlokes what that means. According to Rav, he's talking about the actual liquids. The liquids themselves never become tamei. According to Shmuel, of course the liquids become tamei. It just can't impart tumah to other things. Then we have a machlokes. Was Yossi ben Yoezer referring to bei midbachaya, the liquids that are in the butcher area in the azara, meaning water and blood only, or was he talking about bei midbachaya with the dalid, referring to the mizbeach and all the liquids in the Beis Hamikdash, blood and water, but also oil and wine? When Chagai Hanavi tested the Kohanim when they were coming back to Yerushalayim to see if they still remember the Hilchos Tumah v'Tahara, so we have a machlokes whether or not the Kohanim flunked the test or they did well. According to Rav, they made a mistake. He was asking them, is there a revi in Tumah? He only asked them 4 things. He said the sheretz touches the bread, which touches the nazir, which touches the oil, which touches the wine. And they said, there's no revi. And we know there is a revi when it comes to Tumah and Tahara. And Shmuel says no. He asked them about a chamishi. In other words, he stuck in another thing there between the sheretz and the bread. There was actually one other item, like a kli. And they said there's no chamishi. And they were correct. Chagai later on says, well, all your food is tamei. If they flunked the test, it's understandable why their food is tamei. They don't know the halachas. We have to be makbid and say l'chumra that everything is tamei. But if they did well on the test, why would he say that anything they prepared is tamei? The answer must be that Chagai was saying a nevuah to the future, saying later on you're going to do averos, and then your food will be tamei. Chagai asked him another question on the test. He said, "Is there revi b'kodesh?" And they didn't make a mistake. He was referring to, is there revi when it comes to tumas meis? If somebody touches an actual body, avi avasatuma, that person becomes the avatuma. The avatuma becomes the rishon, sheni, shlishi. And they were right on the test. And why did they do well on that question? Because they understood tumas meis. They were bucky in those halachas. Levi, who says that we're referring to the mashkim, Yossi ben Yoezer was referring to the liquids of bei midbachai, all the liquids of the Beis Hamikdash. We must say that he holds like Shmuel. That Shmuel says they themselves, the liquids themselves, do become tamei, but they don't impart tumah. Why? Because Chagai asked in the second question, if a person who touches, we could explain, if a person touches each and every one of the items he mentioned in the pasuk by itself, not that one touched the other, but he himself touched it, do they become tamei? The person himself is a rishon. Could he make the kli? Could he make the bread, oil, nazid, wine? Could he make them a sheni? And they said yes, and they were right. Shmuel is going to have to hold like Rav that only blood and water are tar in Yossi ben Yoezer, but wine and oil do become tamei, or they're able to make tumah, and that's why there's only a revi and not a chamishi, and they were right in that question. But if he holds like Levi, bei midbachaya, it includes also oil and wine, and that they don't impart tumah to others, so why did Chagai ask a question about revi, chamishi? He should have asked the question sheni and shlishi. If they impart tumah even much lower. The Gemara brings a good raya to Levi. It says that mashke bei midbachaya, meaning all the liquids, water, blood, oil, and wine, since they don't have the ability to be metama other things, they became tamei in the Beis Hamikdash, and you take them outside of the Beis Hamikdash, the status quo remains. In other words, they don't have the ability to metama others, even though you just removed the Beis Hamikdash. And if the reverse, they become tamei outside of the Beis Hamikdash. You brought them into the Beis Hamikdash, they don't lose that ability to metama other things. So l'chayra, you see from here a great raya to Yossi ben Yoezer that he was talking about bei midbachaya, all liquids, because it says mefurish, all liquids. There's a raya to Rav, on the other hand, that we're talking about the liquids of the butcher area, meaning just water and blood, because it says if those liquids, water and blood, became tummy, whether it's in a vessel or on the ground, it's tar. Tar, meaning just those two liquids are tar, like Rav explained in Yosef Ezra, we're talking about only water and blood. Reb Shimon argues and he says, depends. In a vessel, which it's tumas mashkim do'iraisa, they're tummy. In the ground, they're tar. Now the Gemara says it's impossible to say that there's a halacha Moshe Messina to say that the liquids of the basement b'chaya, the butcher area, the water and the blood are tar. Even according to the Malama, it says that they're tumas do'iraisa, because if so, how does Rabbi Lazar learn from that idea, from basement b'chaya, that other liquids are tar? It's a special concept by the Beis Hamikdash. Halacha Moshe Messina. Obviously, it's not halacha Moshe Messina. Rabbi Yehuda holds, as you saw in the chart, that a mashka becomes tumah itself, midoraisa, and has the ability to impart its tumah to food and to kalim. That's how we understood in the beginning. However, from the brisa, it's very obvious that Rabbi Yehuda retracted his shita. Why? It says in the brisa that a kli that has an inside and an out, let's say a pillowcase, if the inside became tameh, the outside also becomes tameh. But if the outside becomes tameh, the inside does not become tameh. So, and Rabbi Yehuda explains, he qualifies this and he says, it's talking about that it became tameh through liquids, but if a sheretz touched it, even if it touched the outside, the inside becomes tameh. Now, if liquids are doiraisa, they have the ability to impart tumah to kalim and doiraisa, then what's the difference whether it's a sheretz or water? Sheretz and water or liquids have the same halacha properties, according to that. And also from the fact that he didn't differentiate between different types of liquids, water that became tameh by someone touching with his hands, that's a sheni l'tumah, or from a sheretz, you see that even water from a sheretz is only midarabanan, has the ability midarabanan to be mitama. Have a wonderful day.